In 1872, Charles Darwin published a book that nobody talks about anymore, Not on the Origin of Species, a different one. In it, he described one human behavior that confused him more than any other in the natural world, more than language, more than tool use, more than war. He called it the most peculiar and most human of all expressions. It was blushing, and he never fully figured out why we do it. That question sat mostly unanswered for over a century, and the answer scientists eventually found says something deeply uncomfortable about what your face is actually built for. Let's start with the basics. When you blush, the small blood vessels in your face, called capillaries, dilate. They widen. Blood rushes in. Your skin turns red. And here is the critical part. This happens automatically. It is controlled by the sympathetic nervous system, the same system that controls your fight or flight response. You cannot consciously trigger it. You cannot consciously stop it. Trying to stop it often makes it worse. Your face is doing something completely outside your control. Now, here's what makes humans strange. Every other animal on Earth has an involuntary fight or flight response. Every other animal flushes blood to its muscles when threatened, but no other animal flushes visible blood to its face in a social situation. Not chimpanzees, not dogs, not any of the thousands of species that scientists have studied across 2 centuries of research. Just us. Darwin knew this. It bothered him enormously, because if blushing served no purpose, evolution should have eliminated it. Useless traits don't survive millions of years of natural selection. Everything that persists because it does something. But what could turning red in front of other people possibly do for you? For decades, the leading theory was embarrassment regulation, the idea that blushing signals to others that you recognize you violated a social norm, and that recognition itself softens the social penalty. A 1997 study by psychologist Rowland Miller at Sam Houston State University found some support for this. People who blushed visibly after a social mistake were rated as more trustworthy and more likable than people who didn't blush at all. The blush, in other words, was doing something socially useful. It was signaling remorse before a single word of apology was spoken. But that still doesn't explain why it had to be involuntary. You could apologize voluntarily, you could look ashamed voluntarily. Why did evolution build a system that bypasses your conscious control entirely? This is where it gets stranger. In 2009, psychologist Peter de Jong at the University of Groningen proposed what is now the leading scientific explanation. He called it the appeasement hypothesis. In any social group, getting caught violating a norm, lying, cheating, taking more than your share, is dangerous. In a tribal world, it could get you excluded. Excluded meant dead. So your brain needed a way to immediately and convincingly signal to the group, I know what I did, I am not a threat. I submit to the social order. The problem with voluntary signals is that they can be faked. Anyone can say sorry. Anyone can put on a remorseful expression. But a blush cannot be faked. It is physiologically impossible to produce a genuine blush on command. Actors cannot do it. Politicians cannot do it. No amount of practice or training produces a real blush at will. This is what made it so valuable. It is what biologists call an honest signal, a signal that is costly or impossible to fake, and therefore carries reliable information. When your face goes red, the people around you receive a message that bypasses every filter your conscious mind could apply. Your body is telling the truth about your internal state, whether you want it to or not, and the group benefits from that information. A person who blushes when caught is fundamentally different from a person who doesn't. One is showing you they are calibrated to social norms. The other might not be. Over hundreds of thousands of years, groups that could quickly identify who genuinely cared about social rules and who didn't had a massive survival advantage. The blush was a real-time honesty detector built into every face. This also explains something most people have experienced but never thought to question. Why does blushing make it worse? You get caught, you blush. You try to stop blushing. You can't. You blush harder. The whole thing spirals. From the inside, it feels like your body is betraying you. But from the outside, that escalation is the system working exactly as designed. Every additional second of visible redness is additional confirmation that the signal is genuine. If you could turn it off at will, it would be worthless. Here's the part nobody tells you. Research shows that people who never blush, or who blush significantly less than average, are consistently rated as less trustworthy, less likable, and harder to read. A face that never reveals anything involuntary is a face that makes other people nervous. Because somewhere deep in your evolved social brain, a face that can't be read is a face that might be hiding something dangerous. The blush isn't a flaw in your social performance. It is your social performance. The embarrassment you feel is the price of having a face that other people can actually trust. And now here's the modern collision. You blush in front of your boss. You blush in front of a stranger at a checkout counter. You blush watching an embarrassing scene in a film alone in your bedroom with nobody watching, where the social stakes are literally zero. That last one is the most revealing because it shows that the blushing system doesn't actually track whether real social consequences are present. It tracks whether your brain perceives a social situation, and your brain, running on 200,000-year-old software, cannot reliably distinguish between being judged by your tribal group and watching a fictional character be judged on a screen. The capillaries don't know the difference. They never learned to. Because for almost all of human history, every social situation was a real one. There were no audiences that couldn't see you. There were no strangers you'd never meet again. There was only the group. And the group was always watching. So the next time your face goes red at the worst possible moment, understand what is actually happening. You are not malfunctioning. You are not weak. You are running the most sophisticated involuntary honesty signal ever produced by evolution. A signal so reliable, so impossible to fake, that it survived hundreds of thousands of years of natural selection, because the groups that had it trusted each other more, cooperated better, and outlived the ones that didn't. Your face is doing exactly what it was built to do. It is just doing it in a world that wasn't built for it anymore.